Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight as we do our annual kind of update of listening and learning, just things that are going on around the district, and kind of just bring you up to speed on some of the work that we have been doing over the past year or so. This year's presentation is a little bit different. If you've attended these before, a lot of times we're spent most of the time talking about the student experience in the classroom and the needs of our students that are walking through the door each and every day that we refer to as Gen Z and Gen Alpha. We are going to talk a little bit about them. Basically, tonight's kind of like almost three small presentations. We have some stuff around academics. We have a quick little overview of COVID situation, what's going on in our schools, and then just more some operational, finance, enrollment kind of stuff that I think is important for the community to be aware of what's going on in those areas. And then just a quick update on our prop and all the work that's been going on with our prop R. So with that, Colin, let's go ahead and jump into the first slide, and we're going to do a quick little COVID update. So this slide talks about, modified quarantine. And in order to have this tool, and we refer to it as a tool, to have that tool of modified quarantine, our health department says, if you want to access that tool and modify quarantine your students, then everyone needs to be universally masked. And so last year, if you remember, we were universally masked, but there were times that kids were a close contact of a positive person with COVID-19, and they would have to quarantine for anywhere from, depending on the contact tracing and the timeline, anywhere from like 5 to potentially even 10 days of full quarantine of not being in school. Well, with the modified quarantine and the universal masking this year, if you're a close contact of someone with COVID-19 in the classroom and everyone is universally masked, the student that was a close contact still gets to attend school. And so if you look at that third bullet point there, we've had about 825 kids that under the rules of quarantining last year would have had to miss school. Those 825 kids have been able to still attend school. And, this modified quarantine is our best way right now, anyways, that we're continuing to look at things, and we're hoping to progress to a more normal environment without that mask on. But right now, this is our best tool to keep our kids in school and to protect that in-person learning 5 days a week. And then another thing I just want to kind of highlight down there is right now, we know we have about 85% of our staff that has reported to us that they are vaccinated. That's probably a little bit higher because even though we send it out and ask that information, some people don't take the time to fill that out. So we're pleased to kind of report that, and hopefully that'll continue to grow as we move forward through the pandemic. So with that, Colin, let's go ahead and jump into Gen Z, Gen Alpha. We're going to talk about our little kiddos here for a little bit. So our Gen Z kids are our 6th graders through 12th graders. They're what they refer to as the Gen Z. Our Gen Alpha kids are basically our elementary kids and our pre-elementary, our pre-K kids as well. And that picture really, describes the world in which they were born into. Gen Alpha was born into a world with, they don't know a world without an iPad. The iPad came out in 2010, the same year that these kids were born into the world. So that's a pretty typical picture that you see of our kids. There's things that go along with that, this digital wellness piece that we've been doing with the district, and making sure our kids are responsible and protecting them and doing those kinds of things. So, but that's them, that's their life. And that technology isn't going away. And it's how do we make that all work together and make sure it's being as positive and proactive and good experience for our students and our teachers as well. Next slide. So you've seen this infographic before. If you've heard me talk, there's a lot of information on here. I'm not going to get into all of that. This is the updated one with new information. As every year goes by, they learn more and more about Gen Z and Gen Alpha, and quite frankly, all of the generations, they learn more and more and update the characteristics and the stats and things of those generations. And so that's the overall picture of our Gen Z and our Gen Alpha kids, but we're going to pull a few things off of that infographic and just quickly talk about those. So next slide, Colin. So on that slide, it talks about this idea of what I would say is it's this idea of post secondary types of training and schooling. And they specifically talk about college degrees. If you've heard me speak before, I will sit here and tell you, college is not for everyone. Our goal here in Lindbergh is to make sure that every single kid is college ready if they so choose to do that. But everyone out there listening to us tonight can probably think of somebody that went to college, they got an undergrad degree, maybe assumed or took on a lot of debt in order to get that undergrad degree, but they don't use that degree to earn a living. They do something else, or they've got some other kind of training. We want our kids to be able to make those decisions that, hey, yes, this is truly for me. This is where I need to go. I need to go to a university. I need to get an undergrad degree, and this is what I'm going to do. And how we're helping achieve that is through that, success measure of personalized learning, having programs and opportunities and authentic types of learning for our kids to make sure that, hey, yeah, this is really what I want to do, post high school, post secondary education. So that idea of just getting a high school diploma, obviously that is not going to be good enough. You look there, Gen Z kids are 1 and 2 are going to get an undergrad degree. And I would say 100% of them are going to have to get some type of post-secondary type of education. And then there's this idea of mobility. And it's not us as a school system or you as parents saying, hey, this is important for them to be mobile. This is what the workforce in the work environment is going to demand of them, because jobs are changing at such a rapid pace. There are jobs right now that your kids will do that don't even exist yet. There are companies out there, and I have a slide that I talk about reskilling, that, this idea of skills being so important because the tasks may be different and may change for somebody that works for a company multiple times in their career, but those skills may not change. So the tasks may change. The skills are going to be the most important thing that we can help our kids achieve as they go through our educational system. So, but you look at that, 18 jobs, 6 careers, 15 homes. When you look at that, I think of, this idea of it's okay for change. A lot of us don't do well with change, but our kiddos or your kiddos that are going to go out in that world are going to have to embrace that, because a lot of you and myself have had, one career, or, I've done this my whole life. I've had different jobs in education, but I've been, in education has been my career. And so when you look at that, they're going to have this idea to be able to pivot and to embrace that change and have that flexibility and a growth mindset as they go out into the world. Next slide, Colin. So this is an example. It says leadership change. And I equate this more to what a classroom looks like. When you look at that top model there, that was our classrooms. You parents out there, myself, when I was in school, that's what our classroom looked like. And that L could be, you could substitute that for a T, for a teacher. And then here we are, the teacher was there. And then here we were consuming that information and trying to retain that information and then demonstrate it back on some type of assessment that we would be evaluated on. Gen Z, Gen Alpha wants to be more in a collaborative partnership. They want to have a more voice and choice in their learning and what goes on. And that model demonstrates that more. And I would say, we're as a school district, doing a good job of moving the student experience in the way our classrooms look and are designed, more like that collaborative and contribution and giving those students that voice and choice in those classrooms. We're moving there. Do we still have classrooms that look like that top model? Yes, but we are working away from that, where hopefully it's not looking like that for the entire time that they have the kids in the classroom, that it may be for a short period of time, like, hey, I need to give you some information, and then I'm going to turn you loose and let you go get your hands dirty with that information that I've shared. So next slide, Colin. So the workplace in 2030, 23% of the workforce is going to be people like me, the Gen Xers, and then there's going to be 32% millennials. The largest generation in the workforce in 2030 will be our Gen Z at 34%. So that's going to be here before we know it. I mean, that's happening fairly fast. I mean, we're almost in 2022. So that kind of breaks down of what the workforce will look like in 2030. Next slide, Colin. And then I mentioned earlier about reskilling. And again, when you and I were in school, retaining knowledge and information really gave you an advantage over somebody else because we didn't have the internet. We didn't have a computer in our pocket where we could go Google something and get information. The employers are understanding that jobs change, demands change. And so they're looking for a skill set because they know that they're going to have to retrain or reskill their workers. So when they hire somebody, they may be with the idea that you're going to do this task for the next probably 8 to 10 years, but you have these skills that we are looking for. And I'm going to get into some of those here in a minute, what employers are telling us that they're looking for. So they're going to reskill that. So really it's about a skill set. So what is the current relevant information our kids need to know now? What are let's use the Missouri Learning Standards. Those Missouri Learning Standards, that's what the state says our kids need to know. But it's not just about knowing them. How can we demonstrate skill development as we teach our kids those Missouri Learning Standards? And, one of our success measures that you as a community said to us was develop the 4 C's, which is communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. Those are the 4 C's. And, if you possess those and you have a good mastery of those skills in every type of situation that you're in, you're going to be successful. You're going to be able to do anything that someone asks you to do as far as task related or job related. So companies understand that, and they're really looking more towards a skill set than they are, what is this information that you can bring to our company? Next slide. And these are just some of the jobs of the future. This is an updated list. The space tourism agent's the one that I always kind of grab to, but that's going to be here probably before we know it. I know you got to be a billionaire to go in space travel right now, but in time that's going to change, like a lot of things. And then, something that we've talked about, I've talked publicly, and some of you may have heard this, but, at the high school, we're going to start a drone program where our students will actually graduate from high school with a drone aviation's license. And if they want to go work right away and go work for an oil and gas prospector, they're hiring drone pilots all the time, engineers, architects, real estate agents, delivery of goods. You're going to start seeing more and more of that. So that's a program that we're going to be starting in the near future at the high school. So that just gives you an idea of some of those future jobs that are out there that are coming down the pike. Next slide. And then these are the skills. And this is a Wordle that we put together. And this is from Forbes, and then the Future of Jobs report, and then the World Economic Forum. We took what they said were the most important skills and kind of threw them in here. And, one of our C's is right there. And you can also see creativity in there as well. And so being a problem solver, critical thinking, that flexibility that we talked about earlier, that growth mindset, wanting to continue to learn and grow and know, hey, this job isn't going to be here anymore, but I have the ability because I have these skills to go learn a new job and new task and be successful. Next slide, Colin. And then this is something we like to put out in front of our teachers and just, ask a simple question. Who are you designing the student experience in your lessons for? Does your classroom and your lessons look more like for Gen X, or is it more for Gen Z and Gen Alpha? Because when you look at Gen X over here, that was us. It was very curriculum centered, back to that idea of retaining information and being smarter than someone else. There is information basic information that everyone needs to have. But again, information is it's so accessible. It's just right there at your fingertips. It's just, what can you do with that information? We were all about job security. It was all about the teacher. Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they want a facilitator. They want somebody that's going to say, Johnny, here is what I want you to learn. Here are 3 standards or objectives I want you to learn. How you demonstrate those to me is totally up to you. If you and one of your classmates want to write a play and act that out in class to demonstrate that learning, great. If you want to do an oral report, great. If you want to do a written report, great. So again, back to this idea of personalizing that learning experience for our kids so they reach their potential. But we like to put that out in front of our teachers all the time, because if we don't begin to make this pivot everywhere to the student experience looking more and more like Gen Z, we're going to send some kids out into the world that might, what we found this slide somewhere, and we thought it was a good analogy of if education doesn't make that fundamental change, we're going to send kids out in the world that we call kippers. And if you go to the next slide, Colin. So a kipper is a kid in parents' pockets eroding their retirement savings. So what we want is when they leave your house, they go on to post-secondary, whatever it is, that they only come back to visit, that they're not coming back to live and they're being dependent upon you. We want them to go be healthy, successful adults out there in the world. Next slide, Colin. And then I want to take you back to 2018. This is my 4th year as superintendent. And when I came in 2018, I went out and, I did 83 of these listening and learning tours. Anybody that would listen to me or let me present to them, I did it. And we asked people to rank 12 success measures. Some of you may have done that. Some of you may not have done that. And these 12 success measures, I'm going to show them to you here in a minute, but there's like 6 of them that are very traditional success measures that schools and school districts would use to say, hey, we're doing a good job of educating kids. And then there's 6 more that are a little more progressive, a little more innovative in thinking about, the needs of Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And we asked you to rank them, and you had to rank them 1 to 12. So what was the most important thing on that list to the least important thing on that list? Next slide, Colin. And here are those 12. So you look there, ACT score, a very traditional way. Is the 4 C's, was that important to us, for us as a school district? Student attendance, that's a very traditional way. State reading and math scores, very traditional way. Personalized learning, you and I probably did not reach our potential in a certain class or course because of the way it was taught. And we did just enough to get by. And then there was other courses where it really met who we were as a learner, and we really thrived and we really reached our potential in that class. So how do we go about creating every student situation and every student experience that is designed to personalize that so students in every situation are going to reach their potential? And that's a lot of work. And we do that for our teachers as well. We talk about that with our staff. I mean, our staff is in different places. Our education profession is notorious for putting 100 teachers in a room and giving the exact same PL to all 100 of them when the 100 of them are all over the place on the spectrum with that. Now we've pivoted out of that really, I think pretty well. Tara and her team have done a nice job of doing that. But again, is that important to us? Student satisfaction, do our kids, is it important for our kids to be happy and think we're doing a good job? Parent satisfaction, high quality teachers, and so on. You can kind of see the social emotional well-being of our students and staff. And so we rank these, and we asked you when you rank these to identify, are you a parent? Are you a community member? Are you a board member? Are you a student? Are you a teacher? Are you a staff member? So we could break it down on what was important to each group. And we had about around 1,700 responses. So this wasn't like 50 people gave us feedback and we developed these 5 success measures. This was over 1,700 people in 2018 filled this out. So next slide, Colin. So this is what the top 5 overall success measures were. This is when you took everybody in the group consistently across the board. Everybody had the number one thing was high quality teachers. Still the greatest impact on student achievement is that teacher in the classroom. Social emotional well-being of students and staff. If our kids don't feel safe and they don't feel like they belong and they don't feel like they have a seat at the table, they're never going to reach their academic potential. Same goes for our staff. They're never going to reach their professional heights in their reaching their potential as a staff member or a teacher if they don't feel like they have a voice, they don't feel safe, they don't feel valued, they don't feel like they belong. So community said, hey, that's important. Mastery of those 4 C's is important. Get out of the one size fits all education and start personalizing that, get out of that one size fits all that you as parents and I received. And then happy kids, make sure our kids are happy, make sure that you're listening to them and that their voices are heard and that they feel like they're getting a good education and they're happy. Next slide, Colin. And then you as parents, so this was the order of yours was high quality teachers. You really said, hey, those skills are going to be important for my kid to be successful. You also need to make sure you take care of them, make sure that their well-being is good, get out of the one size fits all, and then make sure they're happy. So that was the order our parents gave us back in 2015 or 2018. Sorry. Next slide, Colin. I believe. So what we're going to do is, last year, I kind of showed you evidence of each one of those 5 success measures. I'm not going to do that this year. I'm only going to show you evidence of something that's happened in our district that really illustrates and demonstrates the mastery of the 4 C's. It's a program that we have at our high school called Co-Pilot. And we got a short little video clip for you to watch. So Colin, go ahead and roll that video clip.
Co-Pilot is an almost entirely student-run program, and it was designed to support our rollout of student devices, one-to-one Chromebooks at the high school. In the class, the students learn how to troubleshoot computer problems, both software and hardware. They get to be very creative and inventive with what the Co-Pilot system and how the logistics work, and from the design of their website down to the actual work they're doing on the devices.
We try and allow students to explore their own pathway. So one student might be interested in like a computer science route. Maybe one student's interested in like networking. Some like to do the more hardware type repair. So to allow students to explore and try and figure out their own path as well.
It's an open lab to help others, most importantly, because that's mainly what we're here to do. But it's also an open lab for us to improve our skills and help other people improve their skills.
You can do pretty much anything with a soft set of skills. Once you get that basics, you can soar with it. So I think just having the option of choice, you really get to find like your niche. That's the word, I can never say it. You really get to find your niche within the field.
Personal skills, communication is very important. I think you have to be curious about the subject. And then also technical skills are important, but you can learn technical skills over time with hands-on practice, okay? So that's where the variety, the different types of issues that you encounter, that variety, it helps build a knowledge base for yourself to try and resolve future issues.
A lot of it just comes down to developing problem-solving skills. Personally, I know nothing about Chromebook repairs, but just going through this course, you learn more and more. And so you don't really need to be the best person in tech to get through this course. You just need to want to see yourself improve in that.
Sitting in front of a projector and listening about how to do it is one thing, but actually getting into it, pulling the pieces apart, learning about what each piece does in the computer, having the opportunity to train from different places and get certifications and learn about where people come from and how they got to positions they were. That just takes this course to a whole new level.
It's not just about supporting the devices, it's giving the students this experience that is authentic, career-like, workplace-like experience to set them up to be successful beyond just the academics that they're getting out of high school.
All right, next slide, Colin. So this infographic that you see here, so when I came into the district 4 years ago, we established board advisory committees, and we have one of our board advisory committees is student life. And this is a committee that has teachers on it, parents on it, students on it. And it's really about kind of the student experience. And so they started doing some work around skills, and then the work that they were doing, they kind of grabbed a hold of the 4 C's and kind of developed this. And, this has been in 3 years worth of work. It still has some stuff to go around it, but we just wanted to kind of introduce it to you tonight. But these are things that we believe to be important. Work ethic and effort. I mean, you have to work hard, you have to have effort. How do we make sure our kids are getting that and understanding that as they're in the classrooms with our teachers and in our co-curricular and our extracurricular activities as well. There's the critical thinking and creativity, communication, this idea of respecting other people and relationships and all of that, and being able to empathize with someone in their situation and be able to help them out and maybe help them solve problems, this identity and agency piece. And I want to be really clear on this piece. This is about strengths. This is about understanding who you are and you deciding who you are, not about somebody saying, oh, you have to be this or that. We believe in leading from a strengths perspective. We think that when you focus on your strengths to help you be successful, you are going to be successful. If we don't believe in a deficit model and we don't believe in saying, oh, you have to be this or you have to be that, You as a person get to decide that, because all of you out there as parents probably know your strengths and know your weaknesses and know those things. And we want to make sure our kids are really being self-reflective of who they are and what their value is and what they bring to certain situations, because everyone there has something to bring a value into every situation. We will make sure our kids understand that. Next slide. And then there's been some questions around diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And I just want to really encourage you, if you have questions or people have asked you questions, we have a great resource on our website. I really want to direct you there to that. You know, the bottom line is we want to create this culture where, you know, everyone feels like they belong. Everybody feels like they're included. You know, back when I was a high school principal, I used to say this when I'd be in the gymnasium with the incoming 9th grade parents, and I'd be there and I'd say, you know, we're not going to ask you to do the next 4 years by yourself, but don't ask us to do the next 4 years by ourselves. Together, when we work together, our kids benefit. And, you know, I said, we want to create that culture between that synergy between home and the school, that we create this amazing place where kids, man, they wake up in the morning, they jump out of bed and they're like, man, I can't wait to get to school, because when I get to school, I know someone there values me. My voice is heard. I belong. I feel like I'm included. I feel like I have a seat at the table. That's what this work is about. That's what it is making sure that, and who wouldn't want that? Who doesn't want every one of our kids to feel included when they walk through the doors of our schools? And that's our goal, that we want to try to do, is create that culture. Next slide, Colin. Now we're going to talk about just some of our work. And so we're going to talk about some assessments. So when I came into the district, you know, we did a pretty intentional, you know, paying attention to our assessments and doing those things, but we didn't talk about those publicly. This is the first time I've done it as a superintendent. And, you know, when you look back at the feedback, and you'll get a chance to answer these 3 questions again at the end of this presentation today, you'll get an email sent to you. But we've asked 3 questions every year. You know, what is it Lindbergh does well that we need to keep doing? What is it that Lindbergh's doing we need to keep doing, but we're not so good at it, we need to get better? And then what are things that we need to stop doing? Every single year I've been here has come up: stop emphasizing test scores, stop talking about test scores. Well, we're going to continue to emphasize them, because that academics are so important. That is one piece, but it's one piece where all of these other pieces that we've talked about are just as important. So we're going to talk about some assessments that you as parents, if you want to hold us accountable, these are the assessments that we see the value in, to make sure your kid is learning at an appropriate level and progressing through our system and meeting, you know, those benchmarks where they need to be as they go from grade level to grade level. Next slide, Colin. So assessing student growth. So, you know, a lot of assessments are what we call an autopsy type of assessment. It's, you know, you take it one time, it's one snapshot, you know, it's one snapshot in time, you take it and then you move on. We have done research, we've looked at different assessments, and we have, when I came into the district, we did an impact study around, early literacy and phonemic awareness, and, just looking at structured literacy and just different things. And so that's our FastBridge assessment. So our K-3 kids, if you want to hold us accountable on is your kid progressing or not, that's the assessment that we see the most value in. And then this is new to us this year because, as well as I do, you probably all were in a subject or had a moment when you were learning something and you're like, man, I just don't get it. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. And then all of a sudden, boom, that light switches on and you're like, oh my gosh, I get it. I understand it. That's exactly what the NWEA assessment does for us. It allows us to watch the growth of your student through the system. And this is an assessment that we give 3 times a year, grades 4 through 9. We give it to them and we can see where they are. So here's where you are in September. Here's where you are either in late first semester or early second semester. And here's where you are at the end of the year. That is value to us because we can see, because, when you think about No Child Left Behind, who really got left behind in No Child Left Behind was our high achieving kids. Because you know why? All school districts did, and I was guilty of this as a high school principal. We looked for those kids on the fringes and we put all of our resources and time on those kids to get them to be proficient because we knew our high achieving kids were going to be efficient. School districts across this country That was their MO. That's what they did. This is an assessment that if you're a highly gifted kid, we need to be showing growth with you. And if you're a kid that maybe is a grade level below, we may not get you fully caught up to the grade level in that one academic year, but we've made progress. And then maybe the next academic year, we actually get you caught up. That's an assessment that has value to us. And then our ACT, our ACT still has value to our kids at the high school, because the majority and a lot of our kids at Lindbergh High School, when they graduate, they go to college. And there are universities starting to not require ACT as part of admissions into college, but it's still the majority of them are. And this is an important assessment to us. And our ACT score is as high as it's ever been in the district last year. So, these are the things that are important that we see as a system, that if you as parents want to hold us accountable, these are the assessments that you should be holding. We believe you should be holding us accountable for, because I'm going to talk about our state test, our MAP assessment measure, the Missouri, assessment program. I'm going to talk about that because I want to make sure people clearly understand really what is that measuring. So next slide, Colin. So our MAP assessment in the state of Missouri, we give the state test. And again, it's that type of test I described earlier. It's one time, it's at the end of the year, it's a snapshot in time. It doesn't, it's not timely to inform instruction, where the NWEA, if a kid is struggling with these particular skills or these learning targets that are aligned, the NWEA is aligned with Missouri learning standards, then they can change some instruction to help that kid grow. Where this is, you take this test as a third grader, you're tested on third grade Missouri learning standards. Well, if you're not proficient on it, you just move on to fourth. We start teaching you fourth grade Missouri learning standards. So the math piece is math, but when they call our Missouri our MAP scores reading scores, it's really not it's not a reading test. What that test is measuring are those four things. It does measure reading, research, writing, and listening. You could have a student that's actually reading at grade level, and we have internal assessments for us to be able to show, are our kids reading on grade level? Are they reading on grade level? Are they progressing the way they want? And that is our early literacy and our NWEA. We have ways to measure grade level reading in our district. So your kid could be actually reading okay and doing a good job, but may not really understand research, maybe really needs to work on their writing, and their listening is not so good. And they could be like basic or below basic, just because of those three other scores where their reading score might be. So when you hear people say, 30% of kids aren't reading at grade level based on the state test. Well, that's not an accurate statement, because it's not a grade level reading test. So I just want to make sure everybody clearly understands. Now, those are valuable things that we need to look at, but again, it doesn't really inform instruction. We give them, third grade learning you get assessed on third grade Missouri learning standards, and then we move on to fourth grade, whether you are proficient or not. So next slide. And then talked about the impact study. When I came into the district, the year before, started to be a lot of talk around, structured literacy and, teaching phonemic awareness and our phonics and making sure our kids had those basic fundamental skills to be able to read. And so in our first year here in 1819, we did a pilot and we tried several different programs out. We had teachers input, we had student input into a certain degree at that level that they can give that input. And, we landed on a program called Sunday, and it's a structured literacy program, but we are, back to this one size fits all approach to teaching and learning. It's not the only tool in our toolbox is structured literacy. We also have other types of strategies that we use with our kids. That's our foundation. We got to make sure that they have that. But once they demonstrate that, then how are we enhancing their reading ability? How are we teaching them other things that we need to through other strategies besides, there's a lot of drill and kill in that type of structured literacy, which is good. We need to be doing that. And we're seeing really good progress. If you look there, now these are different grade levels, but at the third grade, when we've had them go through, this is not a cohort group. My next slide is a cohort group that you can see how kids have really improved in their reading skills from the first grade all the way to the third grade. But you can see each year we were getting better and better. So next slide, Colin. This is a cohort group. So if you look at where these kids were in winter of 1920, they were first graders. 61% of them were low risk. We had 26 at some, 13 at high. Then everybody knows why we didn't have an assessment in the spring, right? We went on the longest spring break in the history of public schools and didn't come back. And then we got back in the fall. And again, we were one of the only school districts in the county that actually started in a hybrid model with our elementary kids in school. So we had some in-person instruction going on, but we also had a lot of our young kids and families, about 38 to almost 40% of our families last year chose to be online with our virtual elementary last year. And so we did that. So you see each year, and then this past year in fall, we are at 83%. We would love to see that 95% or higher. I mean, we'd love to see it 100%, but you also have things when you start doing assessments, there's standard deviation of error and just all of those kinds of things. And we'd love to see that at risk consistently being 5 and below. And we feel like if we're doing that, man, we're getting really close to that 100%. But you look from 19, 20, and then you think about the learning environment these kids have been in. I mean, this is working. This is moving the right direction, and our kids are really going to see the benefit of this. So we're really excited so far with our results. Next slide. Well, totally shift gears on you off of assessment. Now we're going to talk about some finance things, because I do think it's really important for you as taxpayers and parents to, know how we think about money and how we're approaching, spending money in our school district. And a couple things that I want to highlight, we have the lowest allowable residential property tax that you can have in the state of Missouri. It cannot be, by law, it cannot be any lower than 275. And we rolled that back this year to 275. And that's because our property values have been going up, and we keep rolling that back. But us and one other school district are the only 2 school districts in the county that have that 2.75 on our residential property. So we also, are always looking at ways to manage our debt or our equity in our school district. And, we had some bonds out there that they did. I think they were the bonds maybe to build Dressel Elementary, possibly, I think it was. Well, in this environment, we're taking advantage of the interest rate and we're refinancing those. And it's going to, save us. We're going to get back almost $4 million in equity back for us to be able to access if we need to for future capital kinds of projects. And then, when I came into the district, the board really challenged, hey, 2 big things, our compensation for all of our employees isn't good. It's low. We're losing teachers to other districts, and we don't really have a plan on how to get our facilities back in order, to get them to where they need to be. And then once we get them there, how do we maintain them moving forward? Well, we've done that. We've done both of those things, actually. We've kind of moved up in pay to where we're very competitive now. And we've done that without having to raise anybody's taxes too. And you'll kind of see why we've been able to do that. And that's just through some efficiencies, and we're really looking at how we were spending our money. So we have a long range facility plan to help us for the future. So next slide, Colin. And then some things, this efficiency piece. So we were really making some good progress, and then COVID-19 hit us. And, if you look at how we did COVID last year, again, not everybody's 100% happy with things or whatever, but, the idea that we had an online elementary school, we put all these resources there. I feel like we did COVID in the 2021 school year about as good, if not better, than anyone else did it. But that did take some money. But so we weren't be able to find as many efficiencies last year. But we've just been looking at things like outsourcing and doing more of a hybrid approach. Like, I'll give you an example. When I got here, we may have had like 5 or 6 HVAC people on staff. Well, did we really need 5 or 6, or did we need more like 3 and then have a contract with a outside group that when we really got busy or got in a pinch, they would come in and help us? And we, when we made that little change, it wasn't a significant amount. I'm going to guess it was probably, if I remember right, in a $25,000, $30,000 savings right there. But you start doing that over time, we've been able to repurpose $1.5 million of ongoing, every operational kinds of money for programs, for student programs, for professional learning, for compensation, all of those kinds of things. So we've been really happy with that, and we'll continue to do that. Finding things like our enterprise programs, like our print shop and our early childhood, making sure those things aren't making tons of money, but they're not drawing down on the operation, that they're actually running in the black and not running in the red. Those kinds of things, which we had some enterprise programs that weren't. We've had to make some changes to say, hey, that's too big a hit on the operational budget. We gotta change some things to be more efficient with that money. And then another thing we did, we invested to help us save money. A lot of our equipment, HVAC equipment was old and needed to be replaced. We also, the lighting in our buildings, in our, like automatic flushers on toilets and things like that. We invested about $11 million into those kinds of improvements in all of our buildings across the campus. And part of that is also just changing, some practices as a school district of operating our facilities as well. And I'm going to show you a couple things that we're seeing. So go to the next slide, Colin. So we are piloting this year at Concord and Sparing, and we're getting ready to bring on the central office, but I'm just going to use this as one of the strategies to help us save money. So when you look at that chart, those bar graph, we replaced equipment in September. So you can see just by putting new equipment in, it was already saving the district money. Last year with COVID, we didn't do anything except for pump as much fresh air into those rooms as we can, and we're still doing that. But even though we're doing that still, we've implemented some other strategies to help us save money, to help us pay back that $11 million. And so in August, we implemented what we call occupied and unoccupied mode at Concord and Sparing. And by just putting our building, it's kind of like when you go on vacation. If you leave in the winter time, you're probably going to turn your heat down a little bit, not low enough to where your pipes will freeze. And in the summertime, you're going to push your AC up. It's the same concept. So when there's not people there in the evenings, we need to, put that building in unoccupied mode. And then like at 6 a.m. in the morning, we need to put it back on occupied. So the building will be comfortable when you come in there. But you look at that savings right there. It's like cut it almost in half. So we're excited about that. And this is just in 2 buildings. We're seeing significant savings. Next slide. And then this is Sparing. You can see kind of the same thing. Put in new equipment, started the strategy of occupied and unoccupied mode. Next slide, Colin. And then this is something that we do with our buildings, and we believe this is, we're kind of unique in this. I don't know a lot of school districts that do this, but we call it hybrid-based, zero-based budgeted, and things that go along with that is we allow buildings to carry money forward. When I was a high school principal in the district I was at, and the way it was in Lindbergh when I got here was, district office gave you, or central office gave you your budget. And then the rules were, if you didn't spend your budget, then central office came and took what money you didn't spend and put it back at central office. Well, that encourages, irresponsible types of spending, buying things that you don't necessarily need. So we want our building principals to think about, what are some long range projects that are going to cost more money than what I would have in one fiscal year or one academic year to be able to do. So if you want to outfit a new science lab, that might take you a couple years to save up money to pay for that. It's like you do in your personal life. If you want to go on vacation, you save your money for those bigger things that aren't part of your everyday expenses. We want our buildings to run in that same manner. We want to run the central office in our district in that same manner. We want to, be responsible. We want to save our money up. Then we want to say, okay, we're going to save this and put this over here for the, $25,000 for the next 2 years because we need that $50,000 to go do this project. So allowing them to do that, we have just seen our building principals really take more ownership in their money, and they're really knowing where their money's going, just like you do when you do your home budget and you really pay attention to that. You really know where every dollar is going, and our principals have really, really embraced that, and we've seen great returns with that. Next slide, Colin. And then enrollment in our district. We are a growing school district. I think this year we grew about 160 new students, but we only netted about 90 students because our incoming kindergarten class was about 60 or 70 kids smaller than our graduating class last year. So we had about 160 new kids, but we netted about 90 kids this year. So we've been running anywhere between 75 and 125 net of new kids each year. Next slide. And then this is kind of just shows you in 2026, we're going to be just under 8,000 kids probably is what that says. We are going to do a new demographic study this year. We put a RFQ out for a demographer. We want 2020 census data to be able to kind of update these enrollment projections. We did this 3 years ago when I came in the district as part of the strategic plan. We did a demographic study to kind of see, where we were going with our enrollment growth. Next slide, Colin. And then let's talk about Prop R. Lots of construction going on around the district. The big part of this obviously was the building of the new high school, but we also did secure vestibules across the district as well. And so next slide, Colin. So this is a great aerial picture from a drone that we have here in the school district. That blue part of the building right there, that's waterproofing. That is the new auditorium, which seats around 1,000 people. It has a balcony, but what's unique about that, we need 1,000-seat auditorium, maybe 5, 6, 7 times a year. So to have a balcony like that, that's a lot of money for that few at times. So that balcony has an operable seating system. So basically it turns into another educational space the majority of the time. You can close off the balcony and have like 600, our auditorium right now seats about 650, and that's what is down below in the lower part of the new auditorium, seats about 650. So you could actually be having a performance going on down below and have that walled off, and you could be using that upper balcony for some other practice or some meeting or something like that. So throughout this whole building, that was the theme, flexibility. Let's not have fixed kinds of things. And we really wanted people in 75 years to look back and go, okay, those folks sitting on that design team weren't just thinking about what they needed in 2019 into 2022 while they were building it. They were thinking about 50, 60 years down the road as well. And so I think, you can really see it starting to take shape. That front there, the 3s and 400s, Colin, if you'll put your cursor on there really quick, that right there gets peeled away, and that all becomes parking lot all the way through there. And you'll just see the main part of the building right there. So we're really super excited about it. Next slide. There's a picture of the main entrance, and that's will be the main drive up to the school. Next slide. This is a corridor in what we refer to as the south leg of the building. That is a garage door that can come down, and you can have a traditional classroom, and there's a traditional door on the other side of that wall, but that spills out into a large collaboration space with another classroom on the other side. So the idea is if you had 2 U.S. history classes together, then you have this common collaborative space, because when you walk all of our schools, kids are out in the hallways working in teams, collaborating, using their iPads to make videos or just working on different things. And so we wanted to create these collaborative kinds of spaces within our school. Next slide. And then that's the old journalism and shop area. That's the foundation wall that's being poured. There will actually be a corridor underground right there that'll punch through that current foundation wall of the building into the locker rooms. And then there'll be a corridor up above. And up there will be the new weight room and the wrestling room in that building. Next slide. This is a picture of the auditorium, and that back part there is the balcony. You can see that. Next slide. This is a long hallway in front of Gym 2. And just if you're been around Lindbergh a long time or you're a Lindbergh alum, we are moving away from the Gym 2 and Gym 3. We're gonna, if you want to help remember, if you all want to remember what Gym 2 used to be. Well, Gym 2 is an old gym, so it's now the gold gym. So we have gold for old, and then the new gym back behind what is currently called Gym 3 is the green gym, because it's new. It's a green gym, it's new. And then Gym 3 is going to be called the main gym. So the students with our athletic director and some other teachers and staff and students kind of rebranded those gymnasiums to call them green, gold, and main. And that's a hallway that basically that long hallway right there will take you from one end of the new building all the way down into the commons. So it's a long corridor that runs the whole building basically. And that's a picture. I have a student advisory that I meet with at the high school once a quarter just to keep me grounded and let the kids have a chance to, share things with me to make sure I know what's going on. And so we did a little tour a couple weeks ago. Next slide. And then this is a picture from the 3rd floor of the west leg of the new building. And from there, you can actually see downtown Clayton, all of the buildings downtown Clayton, and you can actually see one of the buildings all the way downtown as well on a clear day. So next slide. This is a picture of the new gym, or the green gym. It also serves as a storm shelter. And this was something that we had repeatedly asked the county when we designed this new building: are we going to be under 2009 code? Or are we going to be 2015 code? They repeatedly told us 2009. Then, as we had already gone way down the path of probably of no point of no return, they said, oh, by the way, yeah, we said 2009, and it's 2009 as long as you get the building permit by July 1st. Well, we weren't able to do that. So we had this large expense that we were not anticipating, that we would have planned for up front in the project when we had designed it. So, but it's going to be great. The kids, it's something that we needed, that we had talked about needing, but we just didn't at that time felt like it should be a priority in the project. But because of the decision of the county and their timing, it did become a priority back into the project. So next slide. And then this is the remodeled commons. It gets its new floor next summer. And then you can't see it, but over there to the right is the old cafeteria, and that wall is gone. So it's all one big, large commons now. It's a great space. Next slide. That's the remodeled Gym 3, which is now the main gym. And those are new bleachers that are pulled out on that north side. Behind that is a bunch of new storage. And also up above there is an indoor batting cage for softball and baseball. And they can also do pitching up there as well. Next slide. And then this is a slide picture of Kennerly's new secure vestibule that is done. And the glass there that you see is what they call bullet resistant. A bullet probably is going to go through it, but it's not going to go through. You can't break that glass and get through it. It'll take you an hour to get through it. That's what they learned from Sandy Hook tragedy, is that they had a secure vestibule, but they just broke out the glass and unlocked the door, and into the building they came. Inside that secure vestibule and is what we call bulletproof wall. So there is a actual wall there that has bulletproof material and a bulletproof transaction window, because the people that need to call 911, we need to make sure that they're able to do that, and not in a situation somebody gets in there and, heaven forbid, takes people, people in the main office couldn't get to the phones to be able to call 911. So that was the new standard with the secure vestibules that we added at Crestwood, Long, Sparing. We're adding at Truman. We're finishing up at Truman, and we did at Kennerly. And so then we went back and retroed as well our Dressel, our Concord, and our Sappington secure vestibules to put that same type of glass and those same types of transaction windows in those secure vestibules. So everybody has an equitable standard of safety in all of our campuses. Next slide. There's Truman. We poured a new pad out there, and basically where the wood wall is right there, that outside there will be kind of similar to Kennerly's. There's going to be a glass vestibule you'll get buzzed into, and then there's going to be some doors there, and then there'll be stairs that will take you up into what, if you're familiar with that building, is the old nurse's office. And then there'll also be a small elevator right there that will be able to take you up to the main office. Next slide. Okay, so I had mentioned earlier that we had we asked these 3 questions. What is Lindbergh doing well that we need to keep doing? What is it we need to get better at, but we need to keep doing it? And what do we need to stop doing? I don't think organizations ask themselves enough time. What is it we need to strategically abandon? What are the things that we need to stop doing? And so the ones in bold are things that are repeat things that keep coming up. So, communication, anytime we see that, that's good. And that was the highest one there. But if you go to the next slide, it also says we need to be better at communication. So 13 people thought that we weren't very good. But what I would highlight is it was the number one thing in 1920, but it was the number one thing that we're doing better. So I would say that, we listened there, and we took back that feedback, and I think we've done a much better job in making sure that our families are in tune to what's going on in our school district. And you can see the bolded things there. Social emotional learning every year, says we need to do better at that. We need to make sure our kids are feeling healthy and safe, and our staff as well. So, and then the things we need to stop doing. Next slide. So again, comes up every year, focusing on grades and test scores and rankings. So every year I've been here, that's come up. But again, those things are important. but it shouldn't be the only way the school district defines itself or measures its success, and that's why we have those 5 others. It's just given, academics it's a given. I mean, we got to be good at that, but how can we also demonstrate that these other 5 things, we're working on these as well? So it's not one or the other, it's all of it together to create this amazing experience for our kids as we move forward. And then the early changing the start times, we did that. And I'll just say, we learned a lot. It's like those, I'll use a coach analogy here. You practice and practice and think you have everything ready to go in the game plan. And then you go play the game and you're like, oh, we weren't quite ready for that. And we kind of stubbed our toe a little bit early, but we made some changes. And that's what I love about our parents and our kids and our staff is everybody's, flexible and everybody, worked together and we solved it and we're moving forward with that. So next slide. So these will be the questions that you will have an opportunity to answer again. You will get sent these questions. So with that, next slide. And then I think that is it. And I'm not going to do what I did last night. I'm going to see if there's any questions that my team needs to answer before I wrap up.
We had a question in the chat, but I think that has been answered. So you can do your fabulous wrap up.
Well, I don't know if it's a fabulous wrap up or not, but I just wanted this again. I said it when we started, and just, thanks for coming out tonight and listening. And, Lindbergh is just such an amazing, special place, and it's because of our families and our kids. And I just want to say thank you for sending us such amazing kids every single day to work with. And, I know right now in the last 18, 20 months, man, we've been through some stuff, and I know there's a lot of, what I would, lack of a better word, tension out there right now in our country and just lots of things. But what I just want to remind everybody and encourage everybody to come to situations and wherever it is that you're doing with good intentions, that, somebody's doing something that they're not doing it out of bad intentions, that they're doing it with good intentions. And maybe it's something that they're doing that, hey, it needs to be better, or we need to be better at this. So, just really, coming at it with that lens, and just, I just ask that you give our teachers and our staff some grace. I mean, we really thought we were going to be normal when we were sitting in May and we were talking about starting in August, and we had a positivity rate of 2.9, and we, had 7 cases per 100,000. We're like, okay, secondary kids have had enough. Those 7 through 12 graders have had enough time, and if they want vaccines, they can. We were talking about secondary being mask optional, not at the younger level, but just because those kids haven't had that, the parents and families haven't had that option to get vaccinated. And so, but then here came the Delta variant, and then the health department says, hey, you got to universally mask if you want to use modified quarantine. CDC says that our county's in red. It is now moving to yellow. So, so we're not there. And so I just ask that, our teachers are working and our staff are working extremely hard, and just know that they have the best intentions for your kids, and just encourage you just to keep working with them and just being, good teammates together. And if we do that, we're going to do amazing, amazing things for our kids. So with that, I will wrap up. Again, I hope I get to see some of you out in the buildings. I know volunteers are back in buildings, and we're trying to be as normal as we can with those kinds of things. And we'll continue to start peeling back that onion the best we can and get there. And we're looking at ways that we can get there as soon as we can, but we also want to make sure we do it safely. So with that, you guys have a great evening, and thanks for coming out.